Um, so you record it in 1 minute. We're good. Doug, so good to see you on here, my friend.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for having me on. We're going to have a good time today.
Look, if you can't have fun in what you're doing, the why should you do it to begin with? So today is going to be fun. Absolutely. And hopefully everybody gets something out of this. It's a good opportunity to share content, but also in these times of isolation and quarantine, to share our faces and our smiles.
That's right. And our corny jokes too, right?
That's right. Excellent. So it is 11 o'clock. For those of you that are on here and those that are, I see joining as we go on, I want to thank all of you again for taking the time to visit us on our weekly Metro MLS Town Hall meeting. And today we have a really special treat. My longtime friend, Doug DeVitri, has agreed to come on over the next several meetings to really share a lot of his insight with all of you going forward. But before we get into that formal, again, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come on here. Again, we have promised to host this weekly town hall meeting for all Metro MLS members while we're on this safer at home order in Wisconsin. And so the first few weeks we talked about changes in MLS policy, and I think we've done a good job by really kind of airing that out and letting you ask questions. So now it's the next step. We've heard from all of you on wanting to adapt to this new normal. That's why Doug's going to help us with that. But before we pass the baton over, we want to take the opportunity to announce this week's weekly winner in the Quick Search Challenge. And again, for all of you that don't know that, for those who actually clicked on our emails and have actually gone through the process of putting your name in and completed the Quick Search Challenge, this is it. So our very own Vanna White, Erica Zignego, is going to spin the wheel virtually, and we're going to see who's the big winner. Please spin the wheel. Oh, the anticipation is killing me. Oh, my goodness. The virtual wheel is a little different, right?
There we go. Dave Corbin.
Dave Corbin, everybody, is the big winner on this week's weekly Quick Search Challenge. Congratulations, Dave.
Excellent.
What's that?
Excellent.
Excellent.
So I'm going to go into the background. I'm going to let you introduce Doug, and we're going to move forward with a lot of great information for everybody today.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Erica. So again, I want to thank all of you. Now, for those of you who know Doug, he needs no introduction, but for those of you who are joining us for the first time, or perhaps this is the first time you've ever met Doug, the reason why I asked Doug to come in is I've known Doug for a number of years, and I've always felt that he was cutting edge and a real innovator in capturing consumers and what all of us do as realtors or realtor practitioners, or even folks like myself who manage and operate MLSs, to go in and I think offer a different take, a different approach on how we engage in a more mobile enabled world. And frankly, right now, this is the perfect opportunity to bring Doug to introduce you to what he's doing. This is literally a Doug DeVitri moment. I've coined that, by the way, Doug. This is a Doug DeVitri moment. If you don't know Doug, I really want him to talk about himself briefly, but this is somebody who's been in the real estate industry for a number of years. He's a past winner of the University of Missouri Columbia Business School of Entrepreneur of the Year. He is a REBAC Hall of Fame member and is certified through the National Association of Realtors Certified Speaking Professional designation. So Doug, I'm going to shut up because these folks have been listening to me for a long time. And I want to just hand it over to you and just observe. And I appreciate it, Doug. Thanks again for taking the time to join us. We're really excited for this. Doug DeVitri.
Yeah. Well, hey, a big round of applause for Chris Carrillo for putting this together. I think it's time for us to take a different approach, right? It's time for us to really kind of get real about our skill sets, and it's time to get real about how we can get creative given the given circumstances that we have. For when I published this book, Screen to Screen Selling, back in 2015 with McGraw-Hill, there was a lot of pushback, right? There was a lot of pushback from the traditional mindset of we have to be belly to belly, right? We have to show up to these networking meetings. We have to meet customers in areas that we're comfortable with. So now, right now, we don't have a choice, right? We don't have a choice. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do differently? And I think where we kind of sit is there's, as we look at some of these things we're going to talk about in the next series of webinars, we were talking about a lot of different skills, right? Not just technology, not just tools, because the technology will always change, right? But the one thing that won't really change as much is the skills and how we use the technology and how we start to get creative. And so if you can't meet customers face to face, or you can't conduct open houses based upon the local laws, or you can't hold office meetings like you did in the past, how can you do them through this new environment where you're able to maintain, you're able to sustain, you're able to kind of keep things going? And it's not gonna, I keep getting the question, are we gonna go back to the way that we're how things were? Right? Are we going to go back to how things were? And maybe, but I wouldn't count on it. Right? So now's the time to start digging, and you start to look at leaders around the industry. That's why I really got to give a big round of applause for Chris, because he's taken ownership of this and passing it on to you. So however I can be a resource to you in the next few weeks of not just sharing ideas through the webcam, and when we get into the screen share, we get into the whiteboard, or even like participant chat, I just want you to be open to a whole new possibility. If you're serious, if you're committed, and you're willing to do the work, boy, you're going to start to see things happen for you. And when you think about like when business goes back to normal, or if it does go back to the way that it was, you will have sustained a pipeline where it didn't dry up in the next like 1 to 2 months, right? Because you can use this time productively in order to reach out to some of your customers in a unique way. So what I just encourage you to do is, we've got a great group. We've got I'm looking at the attendees list and how many people have joined. Take the time right now to use the participant chat, right? And this is a skill that you're going to get more familiar with as you start to connect with customers. And if it ever gets in a situation where a customer says, hey, can you send that by participant chat? And you don't know, you can't do it. You can't find the menu option to be able to click on it and get to it. What is that? What are people going to, how are people going to think about the level of service you provide? I know that kind of sounds like, I don't know if superficial is the right word, but customers have different expectations, right? And so just here's where kind of my challenge to you is: go into the participant chat right now, share your name, share where you're from, maybe share, there's a question that you have, whether it's a specific technology that you're using, or there's a specific use case that you have, or a specific role that you find yourself in. Now is the time to be able to ask those questions. And even like, as we start to go through with this isn't so much of a presentation so much, but this is a conversation in real time that allows us to get to root cause, right? Gets down to like root issues that you're facing right now, so we can deliver something for this. So Chris, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go into screen share real quick. And again, like, I'm going to model best practice. I'm not just going to talk about it. How's that for how's that for a shakeup and how things are delivered? So right now I'm going into screen share, and I'm just pulling up. This is my PowerPoint presentation for screen-to-screen selling, right? And if you're familiar with SlideShare.net, SlideShare.net is a great way to put your online PowerPoint presentations. In fact, SlideShare, I've been using this for years, like 12 years. And SlideShare ended up getting so popular that LinkedIn actually bought it, right? Because they just say, okay, everybody's doing these professional presentations, and we're professional network, we're going to get on to SlideShare. So this link you see up here at the top, this is a link, and I've actually already taken the time to copy and paste this in the participant chat. So even if you wanted to kind of deviate, or you want to kind of go off path and start to explore some of these resources, you have the ability to do that, right? But let me kind of share, like, as we start to look at some of these things, and let me like get real with you for a second here. I think some of the biggest lessons that we can learn right now are what not to do rather than what to do, right? think about this for a minute. If you're using Zoom right now, did you know inside of the settings that you can activate the participant camera without them knowing that you can enable their participant camera? Now think about that for a minute. So if you're in a relationship building kind of step in the process, and you send somebody a Zoom meeting link and they're not camera ready, and they didn't know that you could activate the participant camera, and because everybody's working from home, like, are you camera ready right now? We're not going to bring you up on camera, right? But if I were to activate your camera right now and you weren't ready, you know, I had someone who they showed up on the meeting with a towel on their head, and I was so embarrassed, right? I was so embarrassed, like I kind of froze. I didn't know what to do because that never happened before. And so what that taught me is I had to go inside of the Zoom meeting settings and disable the participant camera, right? So that's kind of like, that's just one of these little things not to do. But if I go back here into screen share, here's what I'm also seeing is that many of us that real estate, or we've been in real estate for a long time, we have these PowerPoint presentations. I'm just going to kind of bring this up full screen that we can see this. And if I were just going to, if this was my talk, right, for the next 4 weeks. Hey everybody, it's Doug DeVitri, author of Screen to Screen Selling, and I'm going to share with you some ideas on how you can work in the remote environment. So what screen to screen selling is, it's a way to be able to sell our ideas, products, and services. And here is the outline. We have step number 1, we have step number 2, here's part number 1. And as we start to go through these different things, I've been just going to like slide you to death, right? Think about that for a minute. Like, this is so real, isn't it? Okay, I'm gonna kind of bring it to you in another context, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up my little whiteboard here, and then Chris, what do you see on your screen right now?
I see a smiley face with an
Cool.
egg head.
Yeah, all right. So if you think about this, I just had to ask for confirmation because sometimes you don't know what people see. So just by having like a little thing, a little exercise like that, you can start to see. So if I were going to think about, okay, if I'm going to work with a customer, and here's my slides, and I have 1 through, I don't know, 20, 60, whatever. What this does is this makes an assumption that the customers need to know, or your prospective home buyer or seller needs to know what you know in the order they need to know it. Now, how does that work out for you, right? And so, like, if you're a consultant in the process, you're a trusted advisor in the process, you might take, so that's approach A. Approach B is, why not say, hey, based upon your needs to move right now, what's a one thing you're most concerned about? And you could say, well, gosh, it could be the equity in my home. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the equity out that I want as far as, price. Someone else might say, or, the next thing they might come up with is, my timeline, this is my little clock for time. We're just in a pinch right now, and we need to be able to move because the relocation packages come in, and we just don't have the time to be able to move around. So we might even have to, we're okay with reducing our price in order for us to move a little bit quicker, right? And the third thing they might come up is, it might even not just be price, but it might be, what's your commission? And so if you look at your slides, like what order that slide is, and using a digital whiteboard like this, we're able to kind of meet people where they are inside of the process. And we're going to kind of get into some of those things as we move forward. So what I'd like for you to do right now is kind of inside of the participant chat. Again, this is like, imagine if I was up on stage for an hour or two and nobody else said a word, and all you heard was crickets. Like what would that experience be like? So this is your opportunity right now inside the participant chat. Share some of the problems that you're having, embracing this new environment. It could be, how do I get a meeting to be able to start on time? Which technology should I be using right? Because Zoom is just one, and you've seen in the news that Zoom is having some privacy concerns. But gosh, isn't any popular tool right now? Aren't they getting negative press about something? So you kind of have to you have to start kind of like weighing apples to apples with some of this stuff. You might not like the way you look on camera, right? Or you might have people, they don't join the meeting on time. Like you send out the meeting invitation and people don't join on time. So if you don't share kind of what some of your challenges are or what you want to be able to take away, that's totally cool. That just puts me in a situation where I'm just going to make an assumption that you need to know based upon what other people have brought to me, right? That's just kind of the only fair way to do this. So I want you to think about this. As far as like which tool to use, what are your customers most familiar with in meeting screen to screen? Do they have FaceTime? Do they use Google Hangouts? Do they use Skype? Think about this. If you're a heavy Apple user, right? You don't have any Android devices, and you want to say, okay, customer, can you join me by FaceTime? And they can't. What are you going to do, right? What's your plan B? On the other side, if you're an Android user and they're using Apple, what are you going to use? So that's where I kind of would use like maybe Zoom as an example, because it's easier to join than some of the other ones. It's low cost. Now everyone and their grandma is now familiar with using Zoom because of getting around the table for dinners and stuff like that. But think about like this too, like even on the other side of this, if you've used Skype for a long time, would it be reasonable? This is where it kind of gets ridiculous. Would it be reasonable if you use Skype to tell a customer, hey, I want you to go to skype.com. I want you to download the app. I want you to create a username and password, add me as a connection, and then we can start to have a conversation. Like, what would most people say? You got to be out of your mind. Just pick up the phone. And then, there might be the balance between, do we have a phone conversation or do we have one of these screen to screen types of conversations? Well, I got to tell you, like, to have one of these where I see you and you see me, it has there has to be a significant level of trust that's involved, right? I mean, really, like when you think about it, you're expecting somebody to meet you on camera who you've never met before. And if they're ever kind of leery about what you might do with the conversation, or that somebody you might take a screenshot, or you might have the recording and kind of use it in a weird, like people are just leery about this stuff. So you really have to find ways to be able to build trust ahead of time. And that's done through marketing, that's done through social proof, that's done with, recommendations and testimonials. So I want you to kind of like think about this from like a realistic perspective, because before we go into the tools and the features and so forth, I want you to be real familiar with some of the things that you might not have thought about before.
And Doug,
You make a very good point. Two of our attendees have both talked about, the personal interaction and calming the people in this atmosphere of fear. And you're referring to the personal interaction that Zoom allows. What other platforms would you say would give you that personal interaction? And then one attendee did ask, do you have any suggestions for rural areas where internet service is limited?
Yeah, that's okay, let's answer that one first, and then we'll go into the tool. Then we'll go into the tool selection. So in a rural area where there's not such a great internet connection, you're kind of stuck, right? You really are kind of stuck, because the speed of the internet connection is the lifeblood of the screen to screen conversation. Now, let's talk about bandwidth for a little bit. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and kind of go back to, a tool that you can use to test the speed of your internet connection, right? And so this is speedtest.net. And what I'll do is inside of the participant chat, I'll just kind of share this as a link. So everybody, I wish I had stock in speed test. I wish I had stock in Zoom, right? I don't know. I kind of cry and I laugh at the same time too. But so speedtest.net is a tool that you can test the internet connection on any device that you have, whether it's your laptop, whether it's on your phone. And when you think about like even your current living situation right now, and this is the same goes for customers too, right? And if you've had one of these screen-to-screen conversations where the internet or the bandwidth is low, there's a delay. They call that latency from the time where somebody actually says something to the time there's like a response or it actually shows live. And so we need to be super aware of the speed of an internet connection, not just in our office, but also in our houses. I'm just gonna click this so you can or show this. So this isn't hard. So if you wanted to do a speed test, just type in the website, and what button do you think you would want to click on to test the speed of your internet? This one. Okay, good. So now, through my home Wi-Fi network, I'm actually at an Airbnb right now. Here's kind of the rule on this is for the download speed. I want 30 megabytes per second, right? Now I've heard other people say, you can get away with having 10 megabytes per second, and that's okay, but really like 30 is my kind of minimum. And so what I'll have to think about is if I don't have 30, at least a minimum of 30, what can I do inside of my house in order to improve that speed, right? And I want you to think about this too for, this is what everybody's dealing with right now, because now you're forced to work from home. With your home Wi-Fi network system, I recommend getting this is called a mesh network. So Eero is an example of a mesh network. If I were just going to Google mesh Wi-Fi network, you can see that there's many different manufacturers. Google makes one, Linksys makes one, Eero is the one I just showed you. It can show you kind of like what the difference is between having your regular router. And in fact, what I did is this is going to sound so crazy, but I went to bestbuy.com and I ended up finding out that they have I don't know if I'll be able to find it here real quickly, but they have a service with Best Buy that they'll actually send somebody out to your house who's a smart home advisor and will help you prioritize your smart home products. Now, when I had the guy from Best Buy come out, and again, this is before the pandemic, this was probably January, right? He came out to the house. He said, number one thing that you need to have a mesh network. So I said, okay. Because what I want you to think about this, if I go into here and screen share, so let's say this is your let's say this is your house, okay? And it's a ranch with a slab. So that's one floor model, right? And then you have, a 2-story, or maybe you even have like a basement too, right? And where's your home office in here? Let's say it's right here. Well, the reason why I need one of these mesh networks is because you have to have a good internet connection here, especially if you're if you have another room, like especially with your kids, right? You have a room where you kind of need to get away from everybody else. So let's say another room is kind of like off in the basement. This is why it's critical to have these mesh networks put in place, because what it ends up doing is extending where your your internet connection is to other rooms in the house. And so there's 3 considerations with this, especially at home, is you have, number one is how many floors do you have in your home? Second is what's the distance between the router and the location of where you're going to be? And then third is how many of these smart home devices are connected to your Wi-Fi network? Because guess what? Like if you've gone all in and you have smart light bulbs and smart plugs, and your locks are you can operate through your mobile app, or you can operate through Alexa. this is going to decrease your bandwidth. So it's critically important that you continuously do these speed tests. And when you go into, even when you go into different locations, you're going to want to kind of test it every time. And like, think about this too. Sometimes in relationships, if there's ever an issue, you might say, well, it's not you, it's me. Right? It's not you, it's me. Well, how do you know who it is? And so the quickest way to know who it is, as far as the speed of the internet connection, is to do a speed test. So again, with rural areas, this is going to make it a little bit more difficult, and it just might not be possible. So, you've got that. And
Hey,
then,
Doug,
yeah, go ahead.
so just to kind of piggyback on that, I see one of the questions from somebody on the call is, what happens if our realtors, our members, they have completely gone all in. They're good for a virtual environment, but they're working with clients who perhaps aren't hip to being able to communicate online like we are right now. Are there any tips that you would give them so that they don't spend half the meeting working through the client side, really training them? This is how you unmute yourself. This is how you enable your camera. Are there
Yeah.
any tips or tricks that you would share to help our members help their clients?
Yeah, no, this is so good. So this kind of goes back to when, I brought my dad into the Apple store for the first time, and now he's like 80 years old. And the first time he went in, he had a panic attack, right? He's like, he would say to himself, right? And I'm his son, who's supposed to be some tech guy. He says, I'm a dinosaur. I'm never going to change, right? This is what he says to me. And then I start to go to work on him. I'm thinking, okay, Dad, I love you, right? You have grandsons who live in Colorado, right? You only get to see them once, maybe twice a year. Would you want to see them more often? And that was like, it was like you could see like the internal struggle he was having, like like he's, and sometimes when you frame a situation that's in their best interest, or you can use language that's really truly like in their best interest, they start to see things a little bit differently. So what you can do is you can start off by having a phone conversation just like you normally would, and then you can say to someone, I have a new way that provides a higher level of service that you might be interested in. It's really easy to do, and I'm happy to walk you through it. I think also what you'll find is that when you start to use some of this, um, the same process and some of the same technology that we use, you'll also be able to deepen some relationships with people who who you love, who are part of your community. Is that something you're interested in learning? Boom. It's like, okay, tell me how that works again, right? And so, and think about this too, right? When we think about delivering value for clients, I think it's so easy to get in the transactional element, right? Let's talk about the listing and sale of your home. Let's talk about how much you owe, and let's talk about your financing options, right? And what's going to make, so when you get into like that mode, that's like the real estate mode. But like my opinion, and you could say that I'm wrong on this, my opinion is how we deepen relationships with others is providing value in other ways that your competition probably can't, or they won't, because they won't take the time. When I think about my mom, who I bought a webcam 15 years ago and installed Skype on her computer, I taught her how, like, I didn't do it for her, right? That would have been, oh, okay, this is how smart I am. No, I I told her how to plug it in, right? And she got nervous, and she was fearful. She plugged it in, she downloaded the software. I didn't do the clicking for her. And when you think about it, if you, and you've probably heard this quote before, and I forget who said it, but if if you fish for a day, you can feed, you know, if you do fishing, if you fish for a day, you can feed somebody or their family, right? But if you teach them how to fish, you can teach them how to, or they can I totally butchered that.
I think I know where you're going, where you're coming from, though. Teach a man to fish, he can eat for life. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't teach people how to fish, right? Because think about the skills that they can now like use, and you were the one to empower within that. So that's another approach. I think it's a more meaningful approach, because guess what? When they have a conversation at their community event where they're on screen to screen, and be like, oh, you know what? Chris taught me how to jump on here. Chris is my real estate agent, and I love him to death. You all need to talk with Chris.
So our good friend in Arizona, Scott Kibbert, says, if you give a man a fish, you feed them for the day. Teach them how to fish, you can feed them for a lifetime. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
And to pivot from that, do you find that this is true, that with what you just talked about, I think you can create the why. This is why it's important to adapt to. Father, do you want to see your grandchildren more often? You have to do this. And so in that case, a skill set that perhaps realtors need to really sharpen up on right now is the fact that for those realtors who have the ability to train clients who are perhaps not by nature tech enabled, or perhaps it's new for them, that for those agents that have the ability to walk through potential clients, this is how you engage me in a virtual world, because there is more meaningful content here. That those that do dedicate some time right now to helping their clients do that, that long term, they're going to help them break down these technology barriers, which will actually ingratiate and enable their clients to better work with them going forward. It's like you said, this is a competitive difference right now. Survival of the fittest, so to speak, right? So realtors that can do it will thrive in this. The phrase "knowledge is power." This is probably a great opportunity for that. I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, without a question, right? And the thing is like when I wrote this book, Screen to Screen Selling, I was like, this is where the market is right now, right? Like these are skill sets that we need to take action on right now, just because of, the cost savings, the ability to have more meaningful meetings, and so forth. But one metric I never considered was like saving lives, right? Like this is real. Like this is so real that if that doesn't create urgency for you to be able to get on board right now, then, I really, and even if though business goes back to where it was, think about your children that are in school right now, right? How many schools and universities are using a platform like Zoom to be able to host those classes? So when these children or young adults are able to financially invest in a home, that's going to be an expectation, right? It's going to totally be an expectation. If we haven't adopted that, I don't know how long you plan on being in the business, if it's the next 5, 10, 20 years, but like now is the time to start taking this seriously if you haven't already.
Excellent suggestions, Doug. One of the questions someone asked on our Facebook Live platform is any tips you can give someone that does not feel comfortable on camera?
Yeah. Okay, good. So step number 1 is practice on your family first, because your family is a whole lot more forgiving than your customers, right? Truly. It could be having a quick little meeting, right? Or maybe you do like a round table with your agents that are inside of your company, where it's a trusted environment where, you probably have peer groups that you can get together where there's no judgment, right? Like there's no judgment. Um, Even if you didn't have makeup on, or that your hair wasn't properly groomed or combed. You have people like that, right? And they'll also give you honest feedback. So that's something to think about, is just kind of find a peer group where you can start to practice some of this stuff. And you can support one another. And what do I like about what you're doing, right? Well, someone might say, well, Doug, I don't like the way the fact that your head kind of disappears, your microphone comes in and out. Well, somebody's got to tell me that, right? So in order for me to know what that looks like. Another thing to really get to improve is to have good lighting, right? Now, as far as lighting goes, what you do not want is to have your laptop or your phone, whatever you're using, and have a window with natural light in the background. That'll make you look like you're in the witness protection program, right? Where your just face is dark, and people can't see you. So you want like really good light. Now there's a tool called Chatlight or chatlight.com. That's just something you can clip on the top of your laptop, so you have some natural light, or if you even so that you can kind of take that with you wherever you go. Or you can get kind of studio lighting. It's not super expensive, right? The price has gone down significantly, and you can look up some alternatives on Amazon. In fact, if you want, what I can do is I can share some of those probably recommended tools for different types of environments, whether it's like home or office for good lighting. Next is, as far as like your green screen, like right now, I'm using, I don't have a green screen. This is my background at an Airbnb, right? Now you could say that, well, this looks fine and this looks okay. This is better what I have. But at the same time, like, it's just, it could be like a little bit distracting. So, I'll put up a virtual background to be able to make it just a little bit different. Now I'm just in a different situation for me as far as being on camera, because I'm stuck in Corona del Mar, and I only planned out being here for 4 days, and it's turned into about I don't know, 5 weeks. And so instead of changing clothes every day, I just changed my virtual background. That's kind of how I operate. Um, Oh, and then also too, I'll go into screen share and I'll share one more with you as far as just improving your virtual background situation. There's a tool that I recommended in my book a long time ago called the Web Around, right? So this is the Web Around. It's a green screen that goes on the back of your chair. So like a lot of us aren't camera ready, or we have books or files or a mess in the background. This Web Around is green screen, and that's all you really need, right? You just need good lighting in front of you, and then one of these little Web Arounds, and that way you don't even have to worry about, like, if I went back to like kind of where I am right now with my virtual background. um, you don't run into this situation where it looks like this, right? I just stick it up on my chair, and then I would have my virtual background ready. So I know I saw Chris kind of changing his virtual background a couple of times too. It's a way of being able to differentiate yourself in a conversation. And this is something that I do, is just with my virtual background. I like to change it up based upon who I'm talking to. So I have friends in Kansas City, and whenever I have a conversation with them, I pull up the Kansas City Chiefs stadium and the Royal Stadium, because the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. Or if I'm talking to my friends who kind of live in paradise, I'll pull this up. Or this is another kind of like little trick, is what I'll do is I'll find the Google Street View of the office where the company is that I work with. So let me see if I can find this. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I took it out, or I just can't see it right now. But if you think about the Google Street View, if you can find the Google Street View of an office, let's see. Should I show you this, what this looks like?
Do it.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to Google Metro, MLS, Milwaukee. Here we go. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. So then I'm just going to take a screenshot of this. And then I'm going to go into Zoom. And then I'm going to click on virtual background. I'm going to upload the image from the screenshot that I just took. Hey, Chris, thanks for inviting me to join in this discussion today. I know that you're inside the office, and I just wanted to make sure that I stayed 6 feet away. So, we're doing this program right outside. So say hello to everybody inside, right?
Excellent. Excellent. I love the 80s laugh track, by the way.
Yeah, right. I'm trying my best to do it's like the new comedy app that you can download. It's really good. And they have like pre-queued laughter. I know it's just the only way to kind of keep this thing fun and real. So questions, right? Questions from Facebook, questions from Zoom. If not, we can kind of like dig into some other areas that you might not necessarily think about.
There's one other question here. It kind of falls with the same theme, and then we can move on, obviously. But there seems to be a lot of question on just the best way to engage with consumers who perhaps don't have a lot of familiarity with working on a computer in general.
Yeah,
certainly in a live streaming virtual environment. But
right.
I really like the advice on the technology best to utilize is that the consumer, your customer, is most familiar with and most comfortable with. But what if you're working with perhaps a senior citizen who just has never worked with it, isn't comfortable with it? Is there one that you have found works easier than another one that a realtor can really hone in on to say, this is my go-to, it's super easy.
Yeah.
Press 2 buttons and you're in.
Yeah, so probably the two that I recommend the most are Zoom and then join.me. So I know a lot of people have talked about Zoom for years, and I've promoted Zoom for years, but join.me is very similar. The way that it works, it's owned by LogMeIn. It's a simple screen sharing tool. And the way that this works is someone doesn't have to download the app, right? What you can do is give them the specific join link, and they can join inside of a web browser. So they don't even have to download an app in order to participate. So this is using a technology called WebRTC, which stands for real-time communications. And so all this really means is you can activate one of these phone conversations inside of the mobile app. But the challenge is, right, just like with a web browser, somebody has to use a website. They have to have the internet connection. They have to be set up for it. And I don't know what the rules are right now of being able to visit people's homes, or if you should or you shouldn't, where you are. But if you can't, then it does make it extremely difficult. I know that my my stepdad right now, he's in the U.S. Military veterans home, right? Nobody can go in there. Like you can't even send packages there. They refuse everything. So it's a real like awkward situation for folks who maybe kind of need this help, but they can't get it in the way they want. So they have to rely upon those who work with them to help. There isn't any easy answer for that, right?
Another question here.
Yep. Can you want to go ahead and read that one, Chris?
Yep. What about texting? What about mass texting for CRM? Is that a suitable way to connect right now? And
man, I'm so glad you brought that up. Just because you can do something doesn't mean it's worth doing. Can we just leave it at that? Now, here's what I will say is that in a time of where we are right now, one of the worst things you can do is activate a text messaging campaign, in my opinion. Okay. The best thing you can do is to pull out your phone or do it through the computer using your private client text message tool, whether it's Messenger or whatever, and just start a conversation. Are you doing okay? How are things going? I saw that I saw on Facebook that you lost your job. Can I can I bring anything by to help you and leave it on your front porch? Like, you know, I've even haven't had it for like homes.com is like sent me a text message saying, are you ready to dominate your market right now? I'm like thinking, like, come on, man, like that's just not cool. So I think we really have to be open to connecting with people on an individual basis, and then also like through their preferred tool. So if someone has not text messaged you before, now's not the time to reach out to them by text message. If they have messaged you through Facebook, message them through Facebook. So you meet them where they are and where they're most familiar, not by activating a new campaign with a new tool that's going to immediately send the signal, oh, Chris might be, Chris is in it just for the commission, right? We just want to make sure that we're really sensitive to that. Now, what I can say, though, is what I would be thinking about as far as an SMS tool is to kind of build your own automated response system that helps people, gives people answers. And you can do that. I don't know if that's not, I wasn't really part of this program, but I know Twilio is a great tool that you can use. You can create your own programmable SMS campaign or your own SMS chatbot. That same tool can be used for Facebook Instant Messenger. That same thing can be used for an an IVR tool, which is, I believe it stands for Interactive Virtual Response. So it's kind of like an automated phone system. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of create those tools, but I'd be very careful about using them as a prospecting tool unless you've already kind of started engaging with them using that platform.
So just to add to that, Doug, what are some cringeworthy happenings outside of getting a message from a third-party portal right now? What are some cringeworthy ways that you see companies or perhaps even some realtors communicating right now that you would absolutely stay away from?
You know, I don't think it's so much the medium. I just think it's the intent behind it, right? I think I'll give you an example. So my buddy DJ, he owns a fitness club, personal training studio in St. Louis, Missouri, right? And he's owned and operated it for 20 years. Now, right now, things are tough for him, right? Because people cannot come into his facility. And so I'm thinking, okay, how can I, and DJ would, just for the record, he would never be a customer of mine, right? Like he just wouldn't be a customer of mine. But I was like thinking, okay, how can I help somebody who I know probably needs help a lot, that I could just offer value to, right? So what I did is said, hey, DJ, do you want to hop on a quick Facebook Live and we can talk about how physical fitness and wellness is important in the market today, right? He said, absolutely, I'd love to. So we hopped on. We started talking about him. We started talking about some of the challenges we had. I said, oh yeah, you probably have started virtual training, right? He's like, yeah, we're doing it on Zoom and so forth. We're just started off. We're trying to get better. I was like, well, here's a couple tips and so forth. And so I just reached out to him, recorded that video by using Facebook Live. Now, guess what ended up happening, right? I recorded that on my Facebook page, which is my business page. Well, guess what ended up happening when I recorded that with DJ? He ended up sharing it on his page and on his personal profile and let everybody know that we had this conversation. And when people think about this, like as far as, okay, if somebody would ever hire me in his community, they'd be, oh gosh, Doug is the guy, right? Now, my intent was pure, right? My intent was to help him. My intent was to offer value to be able to sustain it. And you know what he told me the other day? He's like, Doug, I've got some clients now. They're actually having more personal training sessions because they don't have to come in, that they travel a lot. So, you think about this, the whole paradigm completely changed for him. Now think about this. If you're a realist, if as a real estate agent trying to get new business, I would think about, okay, who in my community can I support? So I can teach them some of these tools. We can talk about some of the challenges that they're having. When I look at my transactional partners, I might have an attorney. I might have an inspector. I might have a a lender. I might have a title company. I might have a home warranty company. I might have a termite inspector. Each one of these roles are being affected by what's going on right now. And why not start a conversation with each one of them, either individually or as a group? I got to tell you, like before, I used to do first-time homebuyer seminars, and it was a lot of work, right? I had to put everybody together in the same room. I had to feed them breakfast. I had to put together this like elaborate program. Now, all I have to do is activate Zoom, get a Facebook Live set up, and now we're talking about the transaction. We think about strategically multiplying your time. At the time it takes to do one of these conversations, which is an hour, and other people are on here, and other people will say, oh gosh, you got to see this. You got to see kind of what they're talking about here because this impacts me. Now you've spread yourself everywhere. And when you think about like the tactics between like, okay, are you ready to list your house? Hey, I saw you lost your job. Are you ready to list your house? No. What you can talk about maybe is some of the financing alternatives that might be available, right? You can talk about some of the ways to be able to build up businesses based upon the stimulus package. Find ways to kind of like, because people know, right? People know if they're having a tough time. They know when to reach out. And so my opinion is if you just offer significant value, it comes from a good place, like all these little like gimmicks and stuff like that, don't even spend your time on that.
And I don't even want to get ahead of myself because I know you have plenty of content. And everybody, let me tell you, Doug and Erica and I did a deep dive yesterday where we talked about all the content that I'm really excited to share, for him to share over the next coming weeks. I mean, today is really just an introduction for setting it up, and the content that's available is just fantastic. And I mean, there are things in there that as an MLS, we're taking from Doug. We're going to adopt so we can better communicate with you. But if you're a realtor at home right now, and if some of the questions are, how do I better engage consumers where we're not spending half the meeting setting up a meeting virtually, or how do I better help one of my a customer who is very unfamiliar with this technology? There are very easy ways that you can go through and create these short training seminars and just post them on your page or email them out, store them someplace via link that you can send out. And Doug did this. We set up a best practices video that Doug sent to us this morning on specifically how MLSs can better engage their customers with Zoom. Now take that and replace it with Realtor and the consumer. These are all the things that Doug I know is going to talk to you about. So that's why this is so fantastic and just such great information for the time.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Chris. And I'll kind of give, Felicia mentioned one thing as far as tips of what to do and what not to do. Let me just kind of share with you what I would consider to be policies, right? Policies, which are really, if you're a broker, you're going to establish these policies because you're going to want meetings to start on time. You're not going to want to go back and forth. And I'm willing to bet that these Zoom meetings have sucked the life out of you, right? Because you're like in front of the computer all day and your neck's like this, right? So what I would recommend I'm going to go back. Is it okay if I go back into screen share just for another minute? You didn't say yes, so I just did. Can you see the whiteboard? Yes?
Absolutely, yes, I can see it.
Okay, cool.
I saw it.
All right.
Yep.
So on this side, this is where it says implicit. This is what I would say not to do, right? Just don't jump on whenever, especially if you're not camera ready. Don't have a vague agenda. Make sure that like if you send out the meeting invite, that you send it through a calendar notification. And we can probably share that. Let's do that as we kind of go through this. Don't make, especially internally, don't make the camera optional. I would make the camera optional for a customer, but I would always want to be on camera. And think about this too, like even in a negotiation position, body language says a lot. So camera can be very revealing if you wanted to or not. So, uncertainty with the internet. I'm not sure for how fast my speed is. Letting participants decide what their mute and unmute settings are. I as the meeting host want to control that. And so forth. So I'm gonna probably one of the most valuable things I can offer to you right now, as far as don't, it's actually a do, is I'm gonna go to zoom.us. so you can see what this looks like. Because I know many of us are using Zoom. If you're sick of me talking about Zoom, then just know that a lot of these same features apply in different platforms. So I just scroll down to the very bottom and see where it says download. This is you have what's called a browser extension, right? So see this? Can you see this? This is another best practice. Is see how I zoom in, especially if you're working from a mobile phone. Like you want to zoom in so people can actually see what you're talking about, right? So I have this where it says Zoom browser extension. And then what do I use? Do I use Firefox or do I use Chrome? Well, I use Google Chrome. So I click on this, or if I just went to Google and typed in Google Chrome extension, now that I have this saved and add on and synced with my Google Calendar, now what I can do is I can send the invite, right? So when I send the invite right here, my default meeting title is Doug Divitry's Zoom meeting. Right here, you see this is the URL. That's the link to these specific Zoom meeting. Now, this is doing this from the scheduler or for the Chrome extension is 10 times better than doing it from the mobile app. Why? Is because when I add in Chris here, Chris at Metro, there he is. When I add this in, now this synchronizes with his calendar, right? So if I click on tomorrow, let's say at noon, make sure I get my time zones down because I'm in California right now. It's gonna be noon your time. And then here, I'm gonna type in what my agenda is gonna be, right? Hello, Chris. We are, and I would spend more time doing this. We are going to talk about A, B, C, right? Now, once I click save, now it's going to pull this prompt that says, do you want to send this invitation? And now what will end up happening is Chris can say yes, he can say no, or he can propose a new time. If you do it the other way through the mobile app, what somebody has to do is when somebody gets this invitation, they have to copy this whole thing. They have to copy this whole meeting invitation, then they have to go to their calendar software, and then they have to paste it. And when you think about people joining meetings on time, this is huge, right? This is huge. When you think about people joining meetings on time, you want to make sure that people don't have to search for the Zoom meeting link, right? You want to make sure they don't have to search for the agenda. You want to make sure they don't have to search for the attachment. Everything's all in one place. So once I click save and send, then I know that, and he accepts, then I know we're going to start on time. Even though, like you see here where it says notification, if it's not already set up through my calendar notifications to send it out, I can send out a couple of them, right? Especially if I know that Chris likes to be 30 minutes late, which you don't, but I just trying to be funny. So this is a huge time saver for you, but also for somebody else. If you think about, even if you have your agents and you want to have like an office meeting on a weekly basis, set up as a recurring meeting, right? Set up as a recurring meeting inside of Zoom. That's kind of one and done. And then, you don't have to touch it. It'll just kind of work like clockwork. And because even like for any of the brokers that are on here, you send out a meeting invitation to 100 people, 75 people will get it, and 50 people will show up, right? I mean, that's just how it works, right? So, and we could blame it on them, right? Oh, we sent it out to them. They were not being responsible. But really, like, if we want to take ownership of this process, we have to make it easy for them to be able to join, especially if they don't have the same technical capability or the patience, right? Like, I don't have patience when I get a meeting invitation that's not synced with my calendar. I get frustrated. So you can definitely make it easier, and hopefully some of these tools will help you in that process.
So for everybody, I hope that the last 58 minutes were productive and worth your time. Doug, if this is a good stop, we'll just hit pause and say more to come next week. Doug, this was great information. I wrote down a few things myself. I know Erica did.
Yes,
I hope
I did.
everybody on the Zoom meeting did it. Doug, are there any last words that you want to give us this week before we see you next week?
Yeah, think about this, right? If this is new to you, ask yourself some questions, right? How do you move a mountain? One rock at a time. One stone
one
at a
rock
time.
at a time.
How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. How do you master technology in today's environment? One click at a time. Give yourself some grace. Really, like, be okay with where you are. I became a triathlete, right? Kind of by accident, because I just didn't know any better. I was getting myself into. My coach said to me, like, okay, you got to run 13 miles. Don't focus on mile 12 right now. Run the mile that you're in. Right? Run the mile that you're in. Now what you're seeing, what we've shared with you are some new ideas. And this is like mastery level, right? Like, we want to get to the point where you're doing whiteboards and you're inserting stuff and you're like, bam, 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 time to task. Okay, there's not this delay and we say, okay, wait, let me find that. Okay, wait, hold on. Like, we want to get you to a point where you have, like, you're running mile 13 strong. So just, be okay with where you are. Run the mile that you're in.
Run the mile that you're in, folks. And we all know that there's still a marathon in front of us. Doug, thank you so much. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming on with us this week. We look forward to seeing you next week, where there'll be more information and more conversation with Doug. Again, thank you to everybody. Thanks to Erica. Doug, be well in your Airbnb in California, my friend, and we will talk soon. Metro MLS says goodbye and continue on. We will get through this together. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Erica. God bless everyone.